and I'm a counselor in private practice. And one of the areas that I've chosen to study is the psychology of Alfred Adler. And I've had the good fortune to travel to many states in the United States and to several countries in Europe, one country in Asia, and one country in South America to talk about the ideas of Alfred Adler. Alfred Adler was born in 1870 in Vienna, and he was born into a family. He had an older brother, and then there was Alfred, and then there were 5 more children, so he was from a family of 7, and he grew up kind of in the outskirts of Vienna with mother and father and his sisters and brothers. And when he was 4, he was sleeping in a bedroom with his younger brother, and his younger brother died. And that profoundly affected Alfred Adler. He began to pursue the idea of becoming a physician. And he went through school and didn't do particularly well. He did well enough to pass. He didn't do particularly well. And he was always interested in social relationships. And he went to medical school, finished medical school, and when he was 25, he wrote a paper, his first contribution to the literature. He wrote a paper called The Working Conditions of Tailors. And he was really interested in helping others and helping others improve their lives. He was a man who was interested in talking about ideas, and not only talking about ideas, but implementing those ideas to help others. Now in 1902, or 1901 or 1902, he saw some writing done by Sigmund Freud, and he said, aha, I want to sit with this man. And there was an exchange of communication, and Adler became part of the Wednesday night group with Sigmund Freud. And that group, from a very small group of 4 or 5 people to a fairly large group of maybe 30 or 35 people who met on Wednesday evenings to discuss psychology and the ideas of Sigmund Freud. And then, in 1911, there was an ugly divorce. And the divorce was between Alfred Adler and a few of his followers and Sigmund Freud. And there was a series of discussions in the evening, and Adler and some of his friends left. And that's always been a difficult topic for people to talk about and to understand. I think it was a division that was necessary and perhaps needed, and changed the world of psychology as we understand it. Now, not only was Adler a physician, he was also a father. He had 4 kids. His oldest daughter was Valentina, and she had a Ph.D. in the social sciences, probably economics. Next child is Alexandra. She's a psychiatrist. She gets an M.D. Aha! And now along comes the number 3 child. And let's see. It's a boy, and his name is Kurt. And Kurt looks at the world and says, how am I going to fit in? And that's an Adlerian idea. How can I fit in? How can I find my place? How can I contribute to the good of others? And Kurt, well, he said, I have a sister with an MD and a sister with a PhD. Where am I going to fit in? Well, I suppose I'll have to have both. So he got an MD and a PhD. And then number 4. Daughter is born, or number 4 child, a daughter, her name was Cornelia. Now she has a sister with a PhD, a sister with an MD, and a brother with a PhD and an MD. Where am I going to fit? Where am I going to find my place? She says, well, I think I'll become an actress. And that she did. She became an actress. Adler was a bit of an actor on the stage. He was a wonderful public speaker. Not as good a writer, and that was one of his downfalls. Is his speaking is much more eloquent and engaging than is his writing. He died in 1937, probably from overwork, and may have from some contributed by the fact that his daughter Valentine disappeared in Russia, and he didn't know where she was. And some would say that he had a broken heart, and I'm sure that that affected his well-being. He was on a lecture tour in Aberdeen, Scotland, and died. He traveled most of the Western Hemisphere, spoke in all over Europe and in the United States, and eventually moved to the United States and lived and worked here the last 3 or 4 years of his productive life. Alfred Adler would be one of the three. Around 1900, in the early 1900s, and just prior to that, there were lots and lots of things going on in the city of Vienna, Austria. And there were 3 men who contributed mightily. I would call them pioneers. They contributed mightily to personality theory and to the practice of psychotherapy. And the first one is Sigmund Freud. And he's the father of psychoanalysis. And I think that we need to really pay homage to anyone who was the founder. We need to recognize their contributions. Whether we agree or disagree, we need to recognize their contributions. And the second individual is Alfred Adler. And Adler studied with Freud and then split. And the third individual is Carl Gustav Jung. Each of them have a specific contribution, I believe. I believe that Sigmund Freud set the wheels formally in motion to study human behavior and the direction of human behavior. I think that Alfred Adler took Freud's ideas and said, I don't agree with you on some, and I agree with you on some, and he created his own field. I think specifically that Carl Gustav Jung contributed, his psychology is called transpersonal psychology, or transpersonal psychology. And one of the things that Jung gave us, he introduced the idea of spirituality into the field of psychology. And I think that's a very powerful point. Adler, on the other hand, he was a physician, psychologist, he was a philosopher, he was an educator, he was a writer, and he was the trendsetter in lots of areas. He was a trendsetter in organizational psychology, he was a trendsetter in occupational psychology, he was a trendsetter in the prevention of psychological problems. He did a great deal for the field of education. He believed very, very strongly in community health education and a strong advocate for positive psychology. Now, he's not particularly well known. However, as you and I begin to talk about some of his ideas that he had, some of his ideas that we hear today is, well, sibling rivalry. There's a rivalry between the brother number 1 and brother number 2, or these 2 sisters seem to not get along very well, or she's a firstborn, or he's an only child. Those come from the ideas of Alfred Adler. If we've ever said someone is feeling inferior, it comes from Alfred Adler. If we ever hear someone talk about, she or he has an inferiority complex, that comes from Alfred Adler. If we hear someone saying, she's just compensating or overcompensating for her problems, that comes from Alfred Adler. If we hear someone saying, that individual would do lots better if they were given a good, strong dose of encouragement, that idea comes from Alfred Adler. Many, many of his ideas are common sense ideas, and he was very much a common sense individual with a common sense approach to life and life's challenges. Adler was a wonderful theorist. I want to talk about 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 of them. The first one is he believed that we are socially embedded, that when we come into life, we enter a family. When we enter the family, we're looking for a way to fit in. So our first society is a family, and about age 4, 5, or 6, we leave the home and we enter school. Our second society. And we hang around school until we're 19 or 20 or 25, and then we enter the community, the larger community. And Adler said that we are socially embedded and that we're looking for a way to find our place in three societies: in families, in homes, in families and in schools and communities. Now, he also offered ideas as to how to be helpful with families, with schools, and with communities. Second idea that Adler believed in very strongly was the idea of equality. He believed that people were equal, that no one's occupation was better than anyone else's occupation, that men were not better than women, or women were not better than men. In fact, what he said is that he believed that we should refer to men and women as the other sex, not the opposite sex. The opposite sex puts us in opposition. The other sex puts us in concert. We can work together. Adler believed very strongly that we are whole people. That's where he split with Freud. Freud said we're going to divide people into id, ego, and superego. Adler said, no, I beg to differ. That's not the way that I see that. I see us as whole human beings. And I love very much to say this word, so I'm going to say it now. Psychosocial spiritual. I messed it up. I'll try it again. I like the word of biopsychosocial spiritual. And biopsychosocial spiritual is the idea of the whole person. Adler says we are a biological person, that we have a body and a body image, and the way that we perceive our body, and the way that we perceive our body image, and also the way that we take care of our body, and that's connected to our psychology, and our psychology is our character traits, our lifestyle. Adler's word, lifestyle, is the unique and specific way that we as individuals respond to ourselves, to others, and to the larger world. The third part is the society part, that the biopsychosocial. The social part is, where do I fit in? Where do I fit in my family? How do I find my place in the school? How do I find my place in the larger community? How do I contribute? How do I cooperate? And the fourth area is the area of spirituality. And spirituality can be spirituality and or philosophical values. And Adlerians believe that in that particular part, that there are three questions that need to be addressed. The first question is, what is the meaning of life? Third, what is the meaning of death? Second is, what is the meaning of death? Third is, what is my relationship with God as I understand God? And if someone says, I do not recognize God as part of my life, then what Adlerians would approach them with is, what do you believe to be important? What are your values? Adlerian psychology is also goal-directed. We're looking at not why someone does what he or she does, but what is the purpose? What is the direction that I'm moving? Where does my behavior take me? Also, Adlerians believe that we are creative individuals, and from early on, from infancy on, we begin to make decisions. The case in point is when a child is, when solid foods are introduced to a child, and we put a solid food in the child's mouth that the child doesn't like, he or she goes, I don't like this. It doesn't taste good at all. And the child is making a decision based on his or her responses to the taste and smell of the food. The individual is a decision maker, and we continue to make decisions all of our lives. Adler believed that we are goal-directed, that we're always moving toward a goal that we have created. If we ask an individual why he or she did something, we're seeking for causes. We're looking for causes. What Adler says is, where does our behavior take us? What is our big goal, and how do we arrange ourselves to get to that big goal? Adler also said that there are three innate potentials that all of us are born with that need to be developed. The three innate potentials that our families, schools, and communities need to develop is the potentiality for intelligence. And I like very much the idea of Howard Gardner when he speaks of intelligence, when we ask not how smart is an individual, but how is an individual smart. And in layperson's language and common sense language that Adler would approve, there are 8 ways of being smart. Word smart, number smart, self smart, others smart, picture smart, music smart, nature smart, and body smart. And all of these we all have. They need to be developed. What we probably do is focus on 2 or 3 primary intelligences that become our occupations and our avocations. Adler also talked about creativity and the development of creativity. We develop creativity based on our self-selection as we go through life. We also develop creativity through being a decision maker and offering an opportunity to make decisions. When we're working with young children, we need to offer them choices. Would you like to have toast? Would you like to have A or B for breakfast? And the child can make a decision. Oh, and the child says, I can make a decision. I'm capable of making a decision. We need to give children decisions to make. The decisions need to be firm, fair, friendly, and we need to be able to follow through when we offer children decisions. And many of us say, as we're parenting or as we're involved with children, we want them to be wonderful decision makers when they're adults. If we want children to become adolescents who become adults who are good decision makers, we need to give them opportunities to make choices as they evolve through life. I think if a child is 10 years of age or more, he or she needs to be offered options. Would you like to do A or B or C, or what else can you generate that would meet the criteria of A or B or C? And the third idea that needs to be created from an Adlerian point of view, and probably the cornerstone of his contribution to the world of positive psychology, is the idea of social interest or community feeling, or a long German word that means that says Gemeinschaftsgefühl. And what Gemeinschaftsgefühl means probably is something like this: doing for the good of others because it needs to be done. Seeing what needs to be done in a situation and doing it, helping out. Now, how do kids develop that? By given the opportunity to help others, by having models of people around them who are interested in others, and by being encouraged. And that's another strong idea from Adlerian psychology, is the idea of being encouraged. And encouragement has to do with the idea of focusing on the positive personal characteristics of others and letting them know that we have noticed those positive personal characteristics, and telling them verbally or in writing that we have noticed what they have done to help create a better world. As a graduate student, I did a master's at the University of Wyoming, and I did a Ph.D. at the University of Wyoming, and I completed my Ph.D. in 1975. And I can remember taking a course in abnormal psychology. And when I took the course in abnormal psychology, I thought that I had a little bit of each of the symptoms of each of the abnormalities that we were studying. I also thought that when we were studying the various systems of psychology and the various systems of psychotherapy, that I would try to act like that therapist for that week or that month or that period of time. And it didn't fit. I didn't find a fit. And I went to hear an Adlerian, and I didn't understand him. I didn't understand what he was doing. I went to watch him do some work, and I didn't understand him. And a year later, I was working with a man at the University of Wyoming, and he kept reading from this purple book. And he was a kind, warm, gentle man. And when he said he was going to do something, he did it. And he was good at getting people to work together and to help each other out. And what I noticed that he was practicing Adlerian psychology as he taught we graduate students Adlerian psychology. And that's how I became involved. And I began to study parent education. And I did in my home state of Nebraska, I did a great deal of parent education. And then I began to learn a deeper level of understanding of Adlerian psychology. And I began to go deeper and deeper into the study, and I've been studying Adlerian psychology now for about 40 years. I have not looked at other theories. Adlerian psychology fulfills me. And I think that the reason that it does is that, first of all, it's a positive psychology. It focuses on the positive in life and also helps us resolve the negatives in life. Secondly, is that Adlerian psychology addresses issues from birth to death. It addresses lifespan, the lifespan of individuals. The third reason I like Adlerian psychology is that it gives me a philosophy of life. It gives me a way to be an educator, helps me consult to others, gives me foundations for counseling, for psychotherapy, and I might interject, it also gives me ways to prevent problems from happening. And I like very much that idea of preventing problems from happening. It's a continuum. It's a philosophy, it's an education, both in the education from a pedagogical point of view and a prevention point of view. It gives a way to consult to agencies, to organizations. It presents a model for counseling and a model for psychotherapy. Also, I just made a mistake in my presentation, and Adler talks about developing the courage to be imperfect. And I think that's one of his ideas is of ultimate importance, is that we need to learn to accept our imperfections and accept the imperfections of others, as that is part of life. We're all moving through life, and one of the philosophies of Adlerian psychology that I like the most is that we're all moving through life hoping to make it a better place. And that's what our, from Adler's point of view, that's what life is about, is improving it for the generation and the next generation and the next generation and the generation after that. I like that idea very, very much. I also like the idea that Adler's psychology has withstood the test of time. And I wonder about modern day psychologists and psychiatrists, and they're thinking, I wonder, will they be around 100 years from now? Well, Adler broke from Freud in 1911, and Adler's psychology is very strong in 2013 and continues to grow and continues to evolve, including here in South America and Uruguay. In a variety of settings. It can be involved, first of all, start with families. And in families, we can work with adult relationships, for example, in coupleship. And I like very much the idea of the Adlerian notions of coupleship. Adler says, and Adlerians believe, that a couple to be involved in a meaningful relationship need to be friends first. Most important idea that we be friends first. A simplistic idea that I use in talking about coupleship is that, first of all, we need to be able to talk about the good things and the bad things. We need to also be able to resolve conflicts in a useful way. We need to trust each other. And there's an important Adlerian idea. Adler says, I can trust, or Adlerians say, I can trust the tongue in your shoes, not the tongue in your mouth. I can trust what you do, not what you say you're going to do. So if we make a commitment that we're going to do something, that we in fact do that. Then we begin to trust the movement. And Adlerians say, trust the movement of individuals. Watch them and see what direction they're moving. Adlerians, and the third part of the Adlerian notion of relationships is to touch. And we need to learn to touch in supportive ways and intimate ways if we're going to have a long-term coupleship that makes sense. Also, Adlerian psychology can work with adult-child relationships. And I like very much this idea of adult-child relationships. That if we look at the home, if we look at the bottom story, or the foundation of the home, like this, that the foundation is built on respect. And that respect is a combination of kindness and firmness, so that I be kind and firm at the same time. One side of the house is the idea of rules. We need rules to get along. And I like the idea of rules as being guidelines for living. And I personally advocate 2 guidelines for living in a family. And the first guideline is to respect others, self, and the environment. And the second guideline is to help each other learn and survive, learn and succeed. The second guideline would be to help each other learn and succeed. So we have respect and we have rules. Over on the other side, we have routine. And a family needs routine. Routine gives respect, or gives credibility, gives predictability, and gives a way to respond to crisis. Now we have a floor or a foundation and 2 sides and no roof. We need to put a roof on our house. And the first part of the roof are the rights. What rights do I have as a family member? We have the right to respect and human dignity and to be involved in age-appropriate activities. So we have 4 out of 5 pieces, and we're missing a piece over on this side. And that piece is responsibilities. With every right, there needs to be responsibility. If I'm going to live in this house, I need to help out with the management and the ongoing, not with the management, but with the maintenance of the house. I need to be helpful to the members of the family. Now, I think also in adult-child relationships, we need to have 5 ideas in mind. The first one is we as adults need to be respectful to our children. That is, we talk only when the atmosphere is friendly, and when in doubt, we don't talk, so we're respectful. The second is that we look at children as being equal to us, not inferior. We are not inferior to them. They are not superior to us, but that we are equal. However, there are differences in responsibilities. The third idea is that we need to encourage kids. We need to catch kids being good and let them know we caught them. We need to build on their assets and strengths. We need to tell them what we like about them. Many parents say to their children, I love you. Oh, I love you. I love my child so much. I think that we need to be able to say, not only do we love our child, but we need to specifically state what we like about our child. I like the fact that you have a good sense of humor. I like the idea that you complete tasks. I like the idea that you're friendly. I like the idea that you have made good friends with another person down the street. That's specific. We also need to communicate love. How do we communicate love? By talking, by touching, by trusting. And the fifth idea in parenting and raising children is we need to take time for training. We need to show kids how to meet the challenges of living. Also, Adlerian psychology can be applied to schools. The same ideas of rules, rights, respect, responsibility, and routine. We can apply Adlerian psychology to the community by doing community health activities, by helping people learn how to prevent problems. We can help people with organizational management, with consultation about employer-employee relationships. We can help people by increasing job satisfaction through the implementation of Adlerian ideas. The advantages and disadvantages of Adlerian psychology is not necessarily easy for me to talk about. I've been an advocate of Adlerian psychology for 40 years. However, let me tell you what I believe. I believe that Adlerian psychology would be viewed by others as being rather simplistic. However, I like the idea of the simplistic elegance of Adlerian psychology, that the ideas can be concentrated down into 3 or 4 or 5 basic ideas that have a great deal of depth to them. We need to be able to understand the depth of Adlerian psychology. Also, Adlerian psychology does not do diagnosis of psychiatric disorders. We do diagnosis only as a way to communicate with other professionals. We use diagnosis as a way to help inform others and develop a common language. However, Adlerians believe that a misbehaving individual is a discouraged individual, that the individual needs encouragement, someone who believes in that individual as he or she moves through life. Also, Adlerian people who study Adlerian psychology are much better at talking than writing. We haven't written our ideas very well yet. And I think that that's one of the ideas from Adlerian psychology that's most important, is the idea of yet. The problem has not been solved yet, so there's always hope. Also, Adlerian psychology has a problem that's faced by all psychologies. How do you measure accurately outcome? Question. I just started to address this question in the last year. And I've written down 3 or 4 or 5 things, and I'd like to share them with you. The first thing is to identify the code of ethics for your profession and follow it. So first of all, we need to be ethical. Secondly, we need to know a theory and practice it. Now, many of us in our graduate level courses wrote our theory of psychology and psychotherapy, and if I were to go back and read the ones that I have written, I would think they are very shallow and they would not withstand the test of time. I think that's an exercise in organization. I think in lieu of using our own theory, we need to use a theory that has withstood the test of time. I also think that we need, as new psychotherapists, we need 2 supervisors. Could be the same person. We need an individual to supervise our casework, and we need an individual to supervise our personal work. As we work in the field of counseling, as we work in the field of psychotherapy, many times there will be something happen in a session that will say, oh my gosh, that jolted me. That was not something I expected, or that reminds me of something from my life. And I need to have a way to address that outside the therapeutic session. I also believe that the new psychotherapist needs to develop a plan for professional growth. Here are the things I'm going to do to aid in my professional evolution and development. And we also need to have a way to monitor our own personal growth and development. And we need to continue to evolve as we move through life. To state it simply, to say it another way, to the beginning psychotherapist, I think we need to know what we know what we don't know, and know who knows what we don't know, and have the courage to ask him or her for help. Another thing I would add for the beginning psychotherapist is I would like them very, very much to develop 4 sets of skills. I think there's 4 separate and distinct set of skills. I think we need to develop the skills of doing individual counseling and psychotherapy. I think another skill is the skill of group counseling and psychotherapy. A third skill is the skill of education in small groups and large groups. And the fourth skill is the ability to consult to an agency or an organization or a group of individuals. And those are four separate and distinct skills. A fifth idea, and this is personal, one of the things that I have done in my professional career is every 3 to 5 years, I've studied in depth another topic of psychology. And I have looked back over my career, and I have done that since I earned my doctorate in 1975, and I have done that about every 3 to 5 years. I take on another area to continue my personal and professional expansion within the field of psychology. I think it is well thought out by a thoughtful, caring individual who has a positive approach to training others over a long period of time. I think that the Center for the Study of Adlerian Psychology has reached beyond the borders of Uruguay and has reached to internationally known individuals in the field of Adlerian psychology to strengthen the materials that are offered during a 3 or 4 year training program here in Uruguay. I think that it's a wonderful program. It's slow, it's thorough, it takes a look at both personal development and professional development, and is based on a set of standards and ethics. I like those ideas very, very much. If I lived in Uruguay and I were a professional looking for another way to understand human behavior, or if I were a psychology student looking for a way to understand human behavior, I would certainly consider the Center for Adlerian Studies in Uruguay. I believe that the group has been around at least 14 or 15 years and continues to move forward through weekly meetings and monthly seminars to train individuals to look at life from a holistic point of view. Holistic, ethical, concerned, compassionate point of view. Those ideas make sense to me.